Welcome to Ask the Techies. I'm D.Lee Beard, and this is the show where we do gadget reviews, tech how-tos, software how-tos, and tutorials. But most importantly, one of the things we do is we answer your viewer questions. And you can send us your viewer questions at questions@askthetechies.com. Love to hear from you. Love to hear your ideas for future shows. Even if you know the answer, send us your idea if you think it'd be a great solution, something you'd like to see on video to share with other people. First off, we've had a couple of questions. Well, this one's from Steven. Steven says, I was watching some episodes of your show, and I noticed that you are working on what appears to be a Mac tablet. I don't think Apple made Mac tablets. You're right, they haven't so far. Another question that's asked is, what kind of Mac are you using? The one where you are using the pen. Well, what I've actually got here is a Wacom tablet. Now the Wacom tablet is basically kind of like a touch screen that you got, but it's definitely corded. You definitely have a cord here that you've got to work with. But basically it gives me the pen. I can touch with the screen and I can select things. I can double click, open things, close them out. So this acts as my pointer, as my mouse basically. Now the keyboard is a little bit of a problem, so I still keep a little keyboard handy for me to be able to type things out when I need to. This is primarily used by people who are graphic designers, because the idea of using a pen and you can adjust settings on it to make different brush strokes to make it a little bit harder depending on how hard you press. It can make a different type of stroke that you've got. So it's not like a touch screen to where you can grab and you can pinch the screen, something like that. You got to actually use the pen device in order to do it. So it's kind of like a tablet PC, except that this is not a PC at all. It's just a display with this touch screen surface over top of it. Basically this connects into the Mac Pro Tower, into the DVI out port. The way we have it set up in our studio is we have the TV set up to the second digital video monitor output on the Mac Pro Tower. And so this gives me a way to be able to control the screen. You all can see what's happening there. I also do a screen capture on the video here so that we can show you in more detail what I'm doing on the screens. This is actually just a Wacom tablet. But you guys really raise an interesting question. You know, there's been a lot of rumors about Apple making an ebook, a tablet PC in essence, and Apple denies that they're doing this. Well, they denied a lot of things, and then sometimes they come out with them again later. So I think it's a very interesting thing to kind of speculate on about the idea of Apple creating a tablet PC that basically would be sort of an oversized iPod. It would basically be a Kindle killer. I don't know if you're familiar with the Kindle. The Kindle is this little ebook reader. You can buy the books from Amazon, and then on here it's really an ugly device. It's a little clunky to use. It's got a lot of keys at the bottom, you know, keyboard that takes up a lot of space to make the device even larger. It's only in black and white, so if you wanted to see something in color on the books, you can't see things in color, which is a limitation, and it only does books. And part of the clunkiness is not just in the hardware design, it's also in just the way you have to interact with it. It's hard to navigate through things that you want to do, or to, you know, turn pages. That's a little bit more difficult with the Kindle. And I think it's quite likely that Apple, what I could see happening is Apple coming out with an ebook that would basically be like an oversized iPod, or about the size of a Kindle, about a 9-inch screen, so it's big enough for a typical page that you could actually view books, and there could be color books in there as well. But this thing would have a touch screen, so that when you turn the page, you flip, you just like you do on the iPod to slide to the next page or the next web browser on the iPod Touch. That's what you would do. You just flip. It's very natural to change your pages. They would have devices built into it to where you just click on a palette, and then you can run your finger across what you want to highlight. If you want to annotate, then you can click on the T button, and then you just kind of pop where you want to. A little box pops up, and then a little keyboard pops up, and you can type in whatever note you want to put for that part. And you can move the note around if it didn't quite land exactly where you wanted it to be. And it would save your content. And one of the reasons I think this would be a great idea for Apple is because they could sell books, not just audiobooks, which they already do, but they could sell ebooks through the iTunes store that could then be synced with your device. Now you can already view some ebooks on an iPod, but it's a pretty small screen, so a larger screen would be nice. A larger screen would also be nice if it was like the iPod Touch, to where you had a web browser. You could check your email. Basically, you could have a whole bunch of buttons, just like you do on the iPod Touch or iPhone, for different applications. Except that this thing being larger, you could actually have multiple applications open at the same time. So in a larger screen, you could have an iPod Touch app here, one here, and another one here. You could have like 4 iPod Touch applications running at the same time in little separate windows that you could, tile perhaps even, who knows. So it's an interesting little bit of speculation about what they could do. I'm just imagining what you could do with books if they were in color. The big minus for the Kindle is that it's not in color. And color is really key when you're talking about things like college textbooks, biology, blue, red, which one's the vein, which one's the artery, that sort of thing. Charts, diagrams, content on the web is also interesting. Even in newspapers, very few newspapers actually have pictures in black and white. They print pictures in color. Everything's in color now. Black and white is so 20th century. I think that that's something that's really going to kind of go away, and that's going to be a problem with the Kindle. Now, some people will say, well, in order for them to do what they're doing, it's going to have to basically be a touch screen. It's going to have to be a lit up device, and so it's not going to have as long a battery life. Well, I'll tell you right now, the MacBook Air has 5 hours of battery life. The MacBook Air. So imagine having sort of a little tablet device, be a little bit smaller, less screen to lighten up. Even if it had just 5 hours, few people want to actually read through a book for more than 5 hours before they can recharge their device. So I think Apple's probably working on something like this to where you can actually buy books, and if they work out a good deal with textbook publishers, then what could happen is students would have a single device about that big that they could use as for all their textbooks. Instead of hauling around 4 heavy, science textbooks, what they could do is actually carry around one device. Oh, and you know what? This device can also turn it widescreen, play your movies. It could also play your music, so it's kind of like an MP3 player. So it could do a lot of different things. There's a lot of possibilities here. I think it'd be ideal for the college student who could view this as, their iPod as well as their book reader. Sure, this thing would probably cost about $900, but when you look at 4 years of college and how many Kindles have already sold, for Pete's sakes, when you look at 4 years of college and all the other things that this device would be able to do, and if the textbooks are a little bit cheaper to produce, and the convenience of having them digitally and easy to mark up, that would be a great deal. That would be willing to make people want to dive into this and pay the extra money as part of their student costs. Because I think it'd be cheaper for the publishers to produce a book that they wouldn't have to worry about how many to print. They could print as many as they want. When there's a next edition, they don't have to wait until there's enough changes. They can make a change right away for the next semester. So you can do the book that way. And with DRM, through the iTunes Store, they wouldn't have to worry about these books being sold off to other students because it would basically be tied in. So they could do a cheaper rate and might actually make a bit more money, and it would cut out a lot of these middlemen buying used books that are ripping a lot of college students off. But in my opinion anyway. I guess they got to make a living, but still it just seems like you don't get a lot back for the books that you sell back. So there's a little speculation about that. Whether Apple's coming out with this sort of thing, I don't know. There are a lot of rumors that in 2010 Apple's going to come out with something like this. I think that would be pretty amazing if they did do it. There's a lot of things that they could tie into it that would make it a really powerful device, a mobile device, even more so than something like the Air. And because you'd have a touch screen and you could interact with the e-books the same way you would a regular book, where you could just go to flip the pages, and where you could actually just take your finger, tap on that button, and then just run your fingers across the parts that you want to highlight. I think it's a really cool idea. Thanks for asking about this. The Wacom tablets are very expensive, so I don't encourage you to go out and buy one right away. But if you did want a Mac tablet, there is a place that you can go. Let me show you. And Axitron can create sort of a tablet Mac. So basically they take a Mac that they buy from Apple and they modify it. So it's often called a mod book. That's what they actually refer to it here as, is a mod book. And basically, it's basically a touch screen, kind of like what I've got here, except it's battery powered. There's no big clunky cord that you have to haul around. It doesn't have to be powered to anything. It's basically built in. It's a laptop. And they basically put a screen over there so that you can interact with it like a pen device. Great thing for you to consider. They aren't really cheap though. So I don't know if you want to go this route or whether you want to wait till a possibility of 2010 Apple coming out with one of their own.